Well, good morning, my friends. Guess what? You found us again. This is Lighting the Candle, a world that works. I'm Bill Carell, and I'm really pleased to be here with two very special people today. One of our standard, the poles in the tent are all of equal length around here, and Lisa is one of the founding members, and it's a really good to have you back again, Lisa Sheehan.
Thank you.
So, in addition to that, we've got a new gentleman that I've just met, and I'm looking forward to meeting and understanding his way of thinking as much as you are, folks. And just to recap for you, we do this, and we've been doing it now for a whole year. Can you believe that? Just under 70 episodes that we have recorded. And it's really with one purpose. You know, we were looking around and we weren't really liking what we were seeing in social media and on the television. And so what we said was, let's put something good out there. Let's tell people what's good about the folks they don't know, as opposed to how to identify the ones that are dangerous, you know? And while we were talking about those things, we've covered all sorts of topics. But again, we're really, really digging deep here to create a listening and a speaking for empowerment. That means in any moment where there's a stuckness in your life, that you can identify what it is, not like there's just something wrong here, but at the same time, you can get yourself back into action. So let's kick it off and let's do a little brief introduction, of ourselves. Lisa, you want to go first and just kind of let folks know what you're doing in the world?
Sure, Lisa Sheehan. Media is my life. Well, at least professionally. Been behind the scenes in radio for decades, and past couple of years, I've been the co-publisher of a conscious living magazine called Epic, empowering people, inspiring community, and connecting with people in that sort of way, including Bill.
As a matter of fact, yes. Thank you. Doug, how about yourself? Give us a little brief thumbnail sketch of what you've been up to.
Well, first, Bill and Lisa, thanks for having me on the show. I'm really excited for this conversation. My name is Doug Brown. My business is helping lawyers and entrepreneurs increase profit, productivity, and actually having a life. My background is, as I jokingly refer to myself, as a recovering lawyer. I practiced for many years and for a firm, and then went in-house. And then I made that transition onto the business side, where I did startups and turnarounds for big global corporation. Then I wound up teaching for 6 years at Malcolm Baldrige School of Business, Innovation, Leadership, and Entrepreneurship, an MBA program. And then I went back into business and did a turnaround of a couple of organizations, a not-for-profit, and helped a jewelry business transition from generation 4 to 5. Got three kids, all in their 20s. I live in Bluffton, South Carolina, and spend a couple of the summers in Orleans on Cape Cod.
Excellent. So we're here today to pick everybody's brain and to stimulate some new conversation. And I thought it might be an interesting topic for us to discuss the concept of leadership. You just mentioned that, and I think that there are lots of ways to describe what leadership is and what leadership isn't. And I'm really interested in being able to focus on when something is occurring in your life, or our listeners' lives, as they're seeing things on TV or in social media or on Facebook or wherever they are at a family gathering. What is it that actually initiates a leadership conversation, and how does leadership get propagated into the world?
Whoa, we could do a whole class on that. I think that the big idea with leadership is that it's a behavior. It's not a title or a role, that there are lots of people in all kinds of different roles that are leaders. And your role as leader depends on the situation. And a lot of people think about leadership as leading other people, but the disciplines have to start with yourself. Mm-hmm. And creating, a compelling vision for the future, having opportunities to motivate yourself and other people and inspire. And really, I was going to say inspire them, but it's more unlocking their own inspiration. We used to think that leadership was, the leader has to bestow upon the followers all of the things the followers need. And my view is the leader has to unlock the motivation and the skills and the aptitudes and abilities of the followers. And if they can't figure out how to do that, they're not much of a leader.
Sounds great. Lisa, any thoughts?
Well, because I'm sure we've all seen people in leadership roles that do not inspire. And we've heard it often that, well, most people believe that, leaders should inspire their followers to lead, to be as high up as they are, and to even go beyond their leadership status. So, and we mentioned elders the other week. You can't call yourself an elder just because you're old. There has to be some qualities that you have in your being that people admire and want to know more about. And I think that's the same thing that applies to leadership in any age group, because anybody could be a leader. I was just reading about someone that where there's a tribe that there is no age limit to be one of their leaders. It's just the requirement that people look up to you for some reason or another, and then you're initiated into that role.
I think one of the signs of great leaders are they're aware enough of their own limitations, and they surround themselves with people that fill in the gaps and complement them. People who are smarter than them and ask good questions. Because a leader's job in 2021 is much more of, especially in business, is much more of a facilitator and a guide than it is a field commander who says, "Thou shalt do this by this date." That's management. Leadership isn't that.
Yeah, you manage things and you lead people.
Absolutely.
Oh, what's really kind of interesting in the conversation is we're kind of getting around the edges of the qualities of leadership and the qualities of a good leader.
Mm-hmm.
And if you take a look at somebody who embodies leadership all of the time, let's just say for a moment that you don't really care too much about how many times he's won Super Bowls and all the rest of that sort of thing. But Tom Brady, he is a guy that I love to talk about, not because he's a braggadocio, kind of in your face, person that on and off of the football field has to always be in command of a situation. It's quite the opposite. He is a very self-effacing human being, and he's kept humble by a woman that's very powerful and actually richer than he is. And the long and the short of the whole thing is that his job in every single play on the field is to execute so that every person's best quality shines in every single play. And when that happens, they win ball games. They score points. People get awards. They get bonuses. And this is where those things come into play. That leadership is a conversational deal that requires participation and kind of equal energy from everybody who's involved in it. And that means, as you said earlier, Doug, that the leader is constantly looking for who's got the best skill set for this particular part of the conversation that we're in. We're going to execute. And now how do I get those people to step forward and take risks and bring the best game that they possibly can? And that's true whether you're in politics, government, education system, business, what have you. The best companies, in my opinion, are the ones in which the leaders start a conversation and let other people finish it. And I really have always enjoyed that. I had the opportunity to work with Jack Welch, back in the 1980s. Minutes. I mean, seriously, I worked for a joint venture between a company called Coherent, which was a laser company, and General Electric. And there were a couple of meetings, that occurred that I watched him ask a question. I never heard him make a statement until somebody said, "Well, what would you do?" You know what he defaulted to in the conversation? He said, "Other things equal, I would always go with loyalty." That really has been emblazoned on the inside of my eyeballs ever since that period of time. So when we're talking about leadership that's occurring on the street level or in the community level, how do we draw out, inspire, grow, and feed and take care of leadership when it occurs naturally out there?
Wow, there's so much there. I think that the asking questions and being secure enough to ask questions is such an important, aspect of leadership, because we really want to, I mean, a great leader will build a team that doesn't need them anymore, that is self-sufficient in the community. And early on, when you're a young leader, you think, well, leadership is having the answers. And the truth is, the more answers you provide to the team as a leader, the less likely they're going to generate their own. They're going to just come to you. More advanced leadership, and there's all kinds of leadership styles and levels of leadership and everything else. But the theme behind it is being able to ask the right questions and then allow the answer to come up and then apply the right style to the situation. Sometimes you want to be really collaborative, and you have time and space. But if you're always using the collaborative style, then that's not good. Just like if you're always using the coercive style, that's not good. I think that those who actually go out there with just a sense of service and purpose to stay focused on what is it that they're trying to accomplish. And you look at the leaders, like you said, Tom Brady, right? I love talking about sports figures because I'm an executive coach, and I do for entrepreneurs and executives what Bill Belichick does for Tom Brady and the team, providing the structure and the leadership. And if you ask Tom Brady, it's not about Tom Brady. You can say he's the greatest of all time, but that's because of the people around him. And I mean, his qualities as a leader to create a team, not necessarily that his individual skills are the best in every single area.
Yeah, Larry Bird comes to mind when you start talking about that. Not the best at any one particular thing, just all around could do it all,
Mm-hmm.
You're both young. I actually got to see guys like Magic Johnson and Larry Bird and Dr. J, and came up through watching all of that sort of thing. And the really key point that I want to drive home here in my own experience, as you said before, it doesn't matter who's on your team. That has nothing to do with anything. So the leader's role is to develop people to the point where there's effective execution. And that oftentimes means allowing people the space to publicly fail without humiliation, and to get out there and give it the best try they possibly can and be rewarded by progress and not necessarily 100% completion of the goal. And there are a lot of people, especially from the 40s, 50s, and 60s, who never believed that you become excellent at something by making a sufficient number of mistakes at it,
One of my favorite little anecdotes from leadership teaching is the story of WD-40. WD-40, the lubricant that is as ubiquitous as duct tape. You know why it's called WD-40? And the answer is because WD-39 did not work. It's called water. It stands for water displacement. It was their 40th attempt to create the product that we now know and is on all hardware store shelves and in your garage. And the more iterations you have, the higher the quality becomes. And we have been trained as grown-ups. Kids fail all the time. They fall on their face, they get up, they keep walking. But we've somehow been trained that failure is a character flaw. And it's just not. It's how you respond to failure. I've flopped on my face more times than I can count. But I'm going to get up, try to learn something, and move forward. And when I have people come to me, and I often will hear, well, I can't get my team to do this. They won't do that. And it's all about the other people. It's turning it around to say, if you've got a problem with your staff, the first place to look is in the mirror. Because if you can't have that level of accountability to at least ask yourself the question, did I pick the right staff? Was I clear enough in what I asked them to do? Am I giving them the space to do it and make mistakes? Or am I, is it, the beatings will continue till morale improves?
Yeah.
So it's this sense that you have to be able to accept in yourself and in your team that you're going to flop on your face and then you're going to get up and keep going.
That really is a personal choice of leadership. Great leaders have absolutely no attachment to the outcome today. And the very interesting part about watching really good people grow in an environment is to never accept the role as like you're doing something for somebody else, even though the service is so important. The service is allowing people to grow into who they naturally are, and allow them to fully express, what they can express in terms of excellence. And when that happens, it's kind of a ridiculous thing, but in most really well-run companies, in my experience, people don't go around looking for who's in charge by title. They go around looking for who has the best information for the next thing we need to do. And I did a podcast a couple of weeks ago, which was basically handle it. And we had a culture of basically supporting people, to rise to the next level in terms of not only for themselves, but again, turning around and training the new folks that came into this culture and allowing them, to have these breakthroughs in performing, and up to and including when somebody made a mistake on a bench and they fried a board, we'd walk in publicly, we'd pick the board up and we'd throw it on the floor and we'd say, look, that experience is never going to bother you again, but you could do this one more time or two more times or three more times or four more times. What did you learn from what just happened right now that you won't have to do it that many more times? What did you take forward, from this?
Yeah, what I take from that is so true is leadership is not an innate thing that you're born with. You can learn and must learn about leadership. And if you're a technical professional, I do a lot of work with lawyers and people who are very accomplished in one technical discipline. Leadership is just as much a learnable skill as accounting or law or finance or engineering, yet people don't put the level of study or effort into it as if it's just supposed to happen.
Yeah.
But it absolutely can be taught. And there are strategies and processes that leaders use to get same results, just as much as Toyota would use a production line to build a car. We have to move leadership from this squishy soft skill that you either have or you don't to an essential business tool that can be learned.
I'm going to go a step further, Doug. I think if we're going to transform what's happening in communities, we got to bring it into the schools. We have to start at a very early age and train leaders to be excellent at working with other people, collaborating, getting the most out of whatever is available, because you're not always going to have the perfect crew every single time. And I was on some losing teams. I'm going to tell you, I was years where when I first started playing football, we lost 4 games in a row by big margins. The coaches went away and said, these 11 and 12-year-olds are just not getting these, Green Bay Packers plays. There's just far too many motions going on here. So they took like 13 or 14 plays that they were trying to teach us, and they reduced it down to 4, which was basically student body up the middle, student body over to the left, student body to the right, or the pass. But it was almost always give John McCullough the ball, and when they started doing that and the rest of us could line up behind, seeing some progress, the system, we won nine games in a row after that. And then my younger brother took over because I was too old the following year, and he went 2 more seasons without losing a game. This was because the coaches had the leadership ability to drop back and say, what can these guys do together? How can we make this work? And that transformed everything. So the Ledyard Falcons, this is an early opportunity to get in there, get busted knees and fingers and all the rest of that sort of thing. And every once in a while, have a little bit of self-esteem generated around a group of people as opposed to just, your own self.
Yeah, we so need to teach this in schools explicitly, not just something along the way or extracurricularly. And I don't know, at the risk of being politically incorrect, I don't think, in my opinion, my expert opinion, that taking the competition out of schools and taking the failure option away, that doesn't build leaders. You become a leader through the failures that you work through. And if you're not trained in life that sometimes you're going to give it your best effort and you're going to have done everything right and you're still not going to win the game.
Yeah.
And, you know, I've seen such character. I lived in Cheshire, Connecticut for 25 years. I was the sports announcer. I was the PA guy, right? And I saw such character in teams that were getting blown out because they didn't give up. They didn't get on each other's back. They held their heads high. They were upset, but it wasn't going to end their life. And they came back and they fought hard and they learned from that. And that's why sports, but not just sports, teaches that in schools. And we can't be raising special snowflakes who are going to melt when things don't go their way. Yeah. That's not leaders. That's not the people. But I will also say that having been involved in youth sports and high school activities, the amount of leadership happening that we don't hear about on the news is extraordinary. These kids are taking on responsibilities for clubs, for volunteer activities, and they are doing their best to try to become leaders. We need to foster that more.
Absolutely. And it's a natural phenomenon. Have you ever noticed that?
Oh, yeah.
So, you know, we went through a whole lot of statistical quality control training and that sort of thing. And we actually applied it to the management model. And what we were learning was in every department, in every sub-department, there's always somebody who's an informal leader. And you can identify very quickly who that is in asking a question of a group of people and then watch who they turn their head towards to see what their reaction to the question is. Very quickly. I mean, you walk into a new situation, know nobody whatsoever, you ask a question, and if it's, you know, if there's an equal leadership thing going on, then people will answer your question. But if it's not, and it's risky to take, you know, the lead and answer a question, they will look at the person, you know, and then that person more times than not will answer the question. So knowing that that's there, and this is a phenomenon, that gives you leverage. It gives you an opportunity in a community. This works when you're walking down the street in a place that you've never been before. And you ask somebody for directions, and then you see the heads all turn, you know? I recommend that you do this, you know, take this practice out into your life and do it a couple, 2 or 3 times over the next week or so, and just see what happens. It's kind of an interesting phenomenon.
And one of the things I learned in business is there's the one who talks the most isn't necessarily the leader. Right. There are tremendous leaders who are the last person to speak in the room. They're the ones that when they speak, you should listen. And if have the functional job of the leader of a team, part of that job is to identify who are the influencers in the room, who are the leaders, and make sure that everybody has a voice, especially those who are, you know, I'm an extrovert. You're probably an extrovert. Lisa, you might be. Giving the people who are longer, they process differently and they take longer to speak, making sure they have room for a voice.
Yeah, I want to ask you a question, Lisa, because since you have been in, you know, media for most of your adult life, and most recently, the magazine that you're working with, Epic. So isn't that about generating leadership and allowing people to come forth and share their expertise with other people or their questions about the world and life?
Well, especially in community. And that's why when you were talking about schools and stuff like that, how extracurricular activities are so important. And that, I think that applies to children and adults, because, you know, that's what led me to pursuing another, you know, an outside venture. And, you know, you see it everywhere. My nephew just became an Eagle Scout, and what an important part of his life that was. and also a lifelong resident of Cheshire, Doug.
Oh, nice.
And my dad was in the first graduating class of the high school, and they had like, everybody played every sport. So, and they never won a game. It was a roughshod group of people, but and that's where I think even in sports and schools is can be considered extracurricular now, because they're getting rid of so many things, and how important it is to keep those programs in schools, and if not, then promote them outside of schools. But then I do have like for your WD-40, there was also another joke that there's a reason it wasn't called Six Up.
Yeah, right.
And as far as leaders, I think, yes, I mean, you can build the qualities, but I think without compassion and communication within that person, you can't see it. And the functional leaders, like you said, need to be able to notice and recognize those that have the abilities and that natural strength to speak up, and then be able to promote them and tell them, give them the specifics and the qualities that, and to boost them up, to get them past that. Because I've seen it even in media where somebody comes, they put in a new system or something, and there was that one person everybody looks to that already figured it out. And then occasionally that person will get promoted. It doesn't always happen, because I think the leadership style that we're discussing is not the norm still, is not the norm yet. So it would be nice if there's all leaders were designed to promote their own from within.
Well, that's why I like to talk about, and we write about levels of leadership, because one of the characteristics of a great leader is you're never done learning. You're always, I mean, I've been studying how and why people and organizations behave for 25 years, and I'm going to study it as long as I'm alive, because I'm curious about it. And that has given me abilities to ask good questions, to develop other leaders. So it's not like this discrete thing that you go take a leadership class and you're a leader. It's really a lifelong journey. And if you have to be secure enough in yourself to say, gee, I don't know, but I want to figure it out. And to allow people around you to shine brighter than you.
And we often come back to ask questions. I mean, I think on many of our topics, it's ultimately boiled down to that you have to ask the right questions, be able to ask the right questions, be trained to ask questions almost, and be comfortable and to fail fast, like they say now. It's like, get back up again.
I did some, I had a nonprofit executive, a very accomplished executive as a client, and he was, I was hired by the CEO as part of the program to help him advance his leadership. And the biggest single thing that he was able to do with his team, which unlocked all kinds of other stuff, was asking questions instead of making statements. Yep. Even when he knew the answer, and even when he wanted to direct it in a certain way. But there's two parts of asking the question. One is asking the question. The second is actually listening to the answer.
Right.
And then what do you do with that? And when he started doing that, it was transformational for him. It made his life better. The team was stronger, and his CEO was happy. It's you're not a leader if you ask a question, if you get an answer and say, well, that's great, but we're going to do this. That actually is worse than not asking the question. Yeah.
Okay.
So there's this interpersonal ability to be curious and ask and answer, and to be open to things that you might not have thought of. And if somebody proposes an approach, even if it's not like you would do it, maybe you let them try, because they're going to learn more. And then you never say, I told you so.
Well, see, the core principle of authenticity, which doesn't get trained into students in school, doesn't get trained into people in the military, doesn't get trained into people in business. the authentic principle of always be who you are first gives you that, that initial butterflies in your stomach, and then you get fire in your belly once you start to really love watching other people grow and develop. That becomes the game. The game is, how far can we take these people that have their own self-limiting beliefs, and they've got these, thought distortions, and transforming especially what used to be a carrot and stick, fear-based management style in a culture, in a company, and allowing people to go through the process of building trust with each other, building trust with the process, with the manufacturing floor, with the customers who come in, and then you end up with this whole philosophical approach that basically says, we're not done. Continuous improvement means there's always a bigger, better question. There's always a way for us to improve this and make our product faster, better, stronger, and that everybody owns that process. It doesn't live in engineering. It doesn't live, in the manufacturers of the components. Each and every one of us gets to put our hand in the air and say, I got an idea. What if?
And it's the leader at the top of the organization.
Yep.
Who has to create the culture where it's not only okay, but it's expected to be authentic. Because business in the before time, we might still be in the before time, it's dangerous to be authentic.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you're authentic, then you're going to show a weakness. And if you show a weakness, somebody's going to beat you over the head with it. And so it has to start at the very top, because it's a culture thing.
Yeah.
And if you're a leader at the top of the organization, you are a leader 24/7, 365 in everything you do, because everybody's watching all the time. You don't get an excuse. You don't get a day off. And when you make a mistake, because you will, just own up to it. I led a number of organizations, and we all have bad days, and we say something that comes out the wrong way, or we do something we're not proud of. So a leader is going to be able to step away from the situation and come back and own up to it, take accountability. That wasn't the right thing to do. And here's what we're going to do differently. But it can't just be about the other person. It's got to be at the top.
I love what you're saying. And the real leader always takes the blame and always gives the credit to somebody else. Because there's no empowerment, in identifying who did what wrong. That is such a waste of time in every organization. So the leader says, I asked you to do this. You did your best. Now let's see what we can do from here. And oh, by the way, not only did you fail brilliantly, that was one of the most spectacular belly flops I've ever seen. And I really have to admire that you put 150% into what didn't work out. Will you do that again for me tomorrow?
Well, there's a difference, that is a fine distinction between accountability and blame. Everybody needs to be accountable. I learned when I was in business, there was this, the discipline. I did not serve in the military, but I learned the discipline of the after action review from some military reading I was doing. And it's been a powerful tool, because an after action review is trying to figure out, how do you get better without blame? So what did you expect to happen? What actually happened? Why was there a difference? And what do we do differently? That's accountability. It's not blame. And it's up to us as a leader to make sure we maintain that distinction.
So here's what I would like to do. We're at a real good point here to pause the conversation, end this podcast for the moment, and then flip over to the other side. And I'd like to take up the whole idea of what comes after leadership, what comes after accountability and authenticity, and all those things get built into an organization. And again, I just want to thank everybody. If you want to take a word or two and just kind of wrap up your thoughts from this half hour, Doug.
Well, it's such a fun conversation to have, because we don't often talk about stuff like this in this way. So I really appreciate the opportunity. And, I'm sure people will have an opportunity to continue the conversation. This is something that is so critical as a foundation to everything else. So I appreciate the opportunity to be here.
Awesome. It's great having you. Lisa?
I was just thinking because the second we label something is the second it's defined by through your own filters. So leadership can mean different things to different people, and maybe just to like almost redefine it or give it a new word even so that people won't be afraid of it,
I love that. That's a great thought to commence on the other side. And I really share the same awe of this conversation that you do, Doug. We never know where we're going with this, but our focus is always on the listener, because we want you unstuck in this world. We want your life to be absolutely amazing every single day because you choose to have that life, not because that's what was given to you and can be taken away. You have a birthright of bringing happiness, enjoyment, and excellence to any situation at any time. I say, I may not know everything, but that's my hope and desire and dream for you. So we'll pick you up on the other side. Thanks for tuning in today. We are lighting the candle and we are creating a world that works. Thank you. We'll see you on the other side.
Bye.
You've been listening to Lighting the Candle, a world that works, part of the Exvadio Podcast Network. You can hear us at exvadio.com/podcasts, Apple Podcasts app, Google Play, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Stitcher, and wherever you find podcasts.